My name is Samantha Wilson, and at 34 I never thought my own brother would break my heart. When Michael announced his engagement to Laura, I immediately offered to pay for their entire wedding, all $45,000 of it. We had always been close through our parents' divorce and beyond. I was thrilled to give him this gift. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, after I had paid nearly everything, my phone buzzed. The message read, "You're not invited. Laura doesn't want you there." If you've ever had family betray you after your generosity, let me know in the comments, and subscribe to hear how I handled these ungrateful people who thought they could use me and toss me aside. Growing up in a middle-class suburb of Detroit wasn't always easy, but we made it work. Our family was tight-knit until I turned 15 and Michael was 9. That's when our parents split up. Dad moved out after months of screaming matches that kept us both awake at night, huddled together in my bedroom as I tried to distract Michael with stories and games. Mom Deborah was suddenly forced to work multiple jobs to keep our house and put food on the table. That's when I stepped into a role no teenager should have to fill, becoming almost a second parent to my little brother. While other kids my age were going to parties and football games, I was helping Michael with homework, cooking dinner, and making sure he got to soccer practice on time. I remember the day his team won their first championship. Mom was working a double shift at the hospital, so I was the one cheering from the sidelines, taking pictures, and treating him to ice cream afterward. The smile on his face made all my sacrifices worth it. When it came time for college, I turned down scholarships to schools in California and New York. Instead, I stayed local at Michigan State, so I could come home on weekends to help with Michael. I worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load in business finance. Sometimes I'd fall asleep over my textbooks after making sure Michael finished his science project or English essay. Our mom tried her best, but she was exhausted most of the time. She'd come home from her nursing shifts with dark circles under her eyes, barely able to stay awake through dinner. I'd often find her asleep on the couch, still in her scrubs. I'd cover her with a blanket before helping Michael get ready for bed. Those years were tough, but they created a special bond between my brother and me that I thought would last forever. I graduated with honors and immediately landed a job at a financial consulting firm in Detroit. The day I got my first real paycheck, I took Michael shopping for new school clothes. He was starting high school, and I wanted him to have nice things. I still remember how his eyes lit up when I told him he could pick out whatever he wanted. We spent the entire day at the mall, laughing and talking about his dreams of becoming an architect. By my late 20s, I had worked my way up to senior consultant. The hours were long, but the pay was excellent. I moved to Chicago for a promotion but flew back to Detroit at least once a month to see Michael. When he got accepted to community college, I paid his tuition in full. He was the first to call me when he got an A on a difficult project, and I was the one he turned to when he was struggling with calculus. We were more than siblings. We were best friends, or so I thought. Michael met Laura Reynolds during his second year of college. She was studying business administration and had a part-time job at the campus bookstore. The first time I met her was during one of my monthly visits. Michael insisted on introducing us over dinner at a nice restaurant downtown. Laura was pretty, with long auburn hair and a bright smile. She seemed sweet and a bit shy at first, laughing at all the embarrassing stories I told about Michael's childhood. "Your brother talks about you all the time," she said, reaching for Michael's hand across the table. "It's like you raised him." "We raised each other," I replied, feeling a warmth toward this girl who seemed to appreciate the bond Michael and I shared. What I didn't realize then was that Laura came from money, old money. Her family owned several properties throughout Michigan, and her father William was a successful attorney. Despite their wealth, there was something cold about Laura's family that I noticed the first time Michael took me to their home for a holiday dinner. The house was immaculate, filled with expensive art and antiques that no one was allowed to touch. Conversations felt stilted and performative, nothing like the loud, sometimes chaotic, but always loving atmosphere I tried to create whenever Michael visited me. Beverly, Laura's mother, barely acknowledged my existence that night, focusing instead on questioning Michael about his career prospects in a way that made it clear she found them lacking. William spent most of the evening on his phone, excusing himself repeatedly for important calls. Laura had two brothers, James and Timothy, who seemed pleasant enough but distant, as if they'd been trained to keep emotional interactions to a minimum. After 2 years of dating, Michael proposed to Laura. He called me immediately after she said yes, his voice bubbling with excitement. "Sam," she said. "Yes, I can't believe it. I'm getting married." "That's amazing, Michael. I'm so happy for you," I said, genuinely thrilled to hear such joy in his voice. Then came the hesitation in his voice. "The thing is, Sam, weddings are expensive, and Laura has some specific ideas about what she wants." "How specific?" I asked, already suspecting where this conversation was heading. "Well, she's thinking June at the Lakeside Gardens. You know, that venue overlooking Lake Michigan, and about 150 guests." I knew Lakeside Gardens was one of the most expensive venues in the area, easily costing over $15,000 for a Saturday in June. Michael was working as a junior draftsman at a small architectural firm, and Laura had just started an entry-level marketing position. Their combined income couldn't possibly cover such an extravagant wedding. Without a second thought, I made an offer that would change everything. "Michael, I want to give you both the wedding of your dreams. Let me pay for it, all of it. Consider it my gift to you both." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "Are you serious, Sam? That's too much. We couldn't ask you to do that." "You didn't ask," I offered. "I've been saving for years, and what better way to use that money than to give my only brother the perfect wedding day? Plus, I just got that big bonus from landing the Westfield account. Please let me do this for you." Michael's voice cracked with emotion. I don't know what to say except, "Thank you. I'll never forget this, Sam. Never." Later that week, I received a bouquet of flowers and a handwritten note from Laura. Words can't express how grateful we are for your generosity. You've made our dreams come true. With love, Laura and Michael. If only I had known then what those dreams would cost me, not just financially but emotionally. If only I had seen the warning signs of what was to come. The wedding planning began with enthusiasm all around. I created detailed spreadsheets tracking vendors, deposits, and payment schedules. I set up a shared cloud folder with 55 files containing everything from venue options to floral arrangements and menu selections. The initial budget we agreed upon was $45,000, which seemed more than generous for a beautiful wedding. Our first planning meeting took place at a cute cafe in downtown Chicago, where Michael and Laura had come for the weekend. I arrived early, armed with my laptop and a binder full of ideas I thought Laura might like, based on the few Pinterest boards she had shared with me. "I've narrowed down 5 potential venues that I think you'll love," I said, sliding my tablet across the table to show them the options. Laura glanced at the screen briefly, before pulling out her own phone. "Actually, I've already decided on Lakeside Gardens. I've been in touch with their coordinator, Rachel." I blinked in surprise. "Oh, I thought we were going to discuss options together. Lakeside is beautiful, but it's at the very top of our budget. There are some equally stunning venues that would leave more room for other elements." "Nothing else compares to Lakeside," Laura said firmly. "Michael and I have our hearts set on it. Right, honey?" Michael nodded, though I noticed he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "It's what Laura wants." Beverly, who had unexpectedly joined us despite not contributing financially, chimed in. "Darling, a wedding venue sets the tone for the entire event. No need to pinch pennies on the most important day of Laura's life." I bit my tongue, reminding myself this was about making Michael happy. "All right, Lakeside it is. I'll contact them this afternoon about availability." As the meeting continued, I noticed a pattern emerging. Laura had already made decisions about nearly everything from the color scheme to the type of chairs she wanted. When I suggested a florist, I had researched with excellent reviews and reasonable prices. Beverly immediately countered. "The Reynolds family has always used Bloom Creations. They did my sister Judith's daughter's wedding last year. Everyone commented on how exquisite the arrangements were." I later discovered that Bloom Creations charged nearly twice what other florists did. But again I acquiesced. I'll reach out to them for a quote. By the end of that first planning session, I felt strangely sidelined in a process I was fully funding. Still, I chalked it up to bridal excitement and continued pouring my energy into making their day special. 3 weeks later came the first real red flag. I had arranged a cake tasting with a renowned bakery in Detroit, making sure to schedule it for a Saturday when I could drive in from Chicago. The night before, I texted Michael to confirm our meeting time. "About tomorrow," he replied. Laura thought it would be easier if just she and her mom handled the cake decisions. "There's no need for you to make the drive." I stared at my phone in disbelief. I had taken a day off work and arranged my entire weekend around this tasting. More importantly, I was paying for the cake, which would cost nearly $1,000. "I'd really like to be there, Michael. I've been looking forward to it." Laura's already confirmed with the bakery that it will just be the two of them. Maybe next time. There was no next time. Over the following weeks, I was systematically excluded from more and more decisions. The venue was changed from Lakeside Gardens to the even more expensive Grand Peninsula Hotel without my input. The guest list expanded from 150 to 200 people. Each time I raised a concern about mounting costs, I was made to feel small and controlling. During a call about the catering options, I finally spoke up. "The seafood package is $8,000 more than we budgeted for food. Could we consider the standard package that still includes filet mignon and chicken options?" Laura's voice turned cold. "If you're having second thoughts about funding our wedding, just say so. We can always tell everyone it's been downsized due to budget constraints." "That's not what I'm saying at all," I backpedaled, feeling ambushed. "I just want to make sure we're making thoughtful decisions." Later that evening, Michael called. "Laura was crying for hours after your call. She feels like you're trying to control everything and give her some budget wedding when you can clearly afford better." "Michael, that's not fair. I've agreed to almost every change and upgrade. I'm just trying to be responsible with the money. If you can't be supportive, maybe you should step back from the planning entirely. Just handle the payments, and we'll take care of the rest." Those words stung more than he could know. I was being relegated to human ATM status by my own brother. The same brother whose science projects I had helped complete, whose nightmares I had soothed, whose college tuition I had paid. The final insult of this initial phase came when the wedding invitations arrived at my apartment for my review. I opened the elegant envelope, admiring the letterpress design and high-quality paper, only to find my name listed under general guests, rather than with the family. When I called Laura to ask about the oversight, her explanation left me speechless. "We thought it would be simpler this way for the seating arrangements. You'll still have a good table, of course." I was being erased from my role as Michael's sister, his de facto parent, through so many hard years. For the first time, I seriously considered withdrawing my support. But the thought of ruining Michael's big day held me back. Surely once the stress of wedding planning passed, things would return to normal between us. I decided to give it more time, a decision I would come to regret deeply. 4 months before the wedding, what had started as concerning behavior evolved into something far more troubling. Laura's demands grew increasingly extravagant with each passing week. The simple, elegant wedding we had initially discussed was transforming into an opulent spectacle that would make royalty blush. "The photographer we booked isn't working out," Laura announced during one of our now rare phone conversations. "I've found someone better. His package starts at $8,000. $8,000, I repeated, struggling to keep my voice level. "That's triple what we budgeted for photography." "He shot Jessica Simpson's cousin's wedding," Laura replied, as if that explained everything. "Everyone uses him." By this point, our budget had ballooned from $45,000 to nearly $65,000. Every time I received an invoice or contract modification, the numbers climbed higher: premium linens, upgraded lighting, a champagne tower, a 10-piece band instead of the DJ we had originally agreed upon. I requested a meeting with Michael alone, hoping that without Laura present, I could reason with him. We met at a quiet diner halfway between Chicago and Detroit. "Michael, we need to talk about the wedding costs," I began gently, after we'd ordered coffee. "Things have gotten out of hand." Michael immediately stiffened. "I knew this was going to be about money. Laura said you'd do this." "Do what?" "Have a reasonable conversation about spending. The budget has increased by $20,000 in just a few months." "You're the one who offered to pay for everything," he said, his tone accusatory. "If you couldn't afford it, you shouldn't have offered." His words felt like a slap. I can afford what we agreed upon. What I didn't agree to was funding an unlimited spending spree. "It's just money to you, isn't it? You with your fancy job and apartment. Some of us don't have everything handed to us on a silver platter." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Handed to me? Are you serious right now? I worked 2 jobs through college while helping raise you. Nothing was handed to me." "Here we go, with the martyr routine," Michael muttered, looking away. That's when I realized someone had been poisoning my brother against me. The Michael I knew would never speak to me this way, would never forget the sacrifices I had made for him. I had lost my brother somewhere along the way, and Laura was holding the map to where he'd gone. What made the situation even more frustrating was that Laura's family, the wealthy Reynolds clan, hadn't contributed a single dollar to the wedding. Beverly was happy to dictate every detail from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the imported flowers, but when it came time to write checks, she was conspicuously absent. The situation worsened at the engagement party, which I had also paid for. It was held at an upscale restaurant with 60 guests, most of whom were Laura's friends and family. I arrived early to ensure everything was perfect, only to discover my name card was placed at a back table with distant acquaintances, not at the family table where Michael sat. When I tried to speak with Michael during the event, Laura appeared as if summoned, linking her arm through his and pulling him away. "Sorry, Samantha, the photographer wants some family shots." I wasn't included in those family shots. As I stood awkwardly by the bar, I overheard 2 of Laura's cousins talking. "That's the sister who's paying for everything," one whispered none too quietly. "Laura says she's obsessed with Michael in a really weird way. Apparently she tries to control his whole life." Yikes. Good thing Laura's setting boundaries. I left the party early, fighting back tears as I drove back to my hotel. The next morning I received a text from a mutual friend, Amanda. "Just wanted to check if you're okay. Some of the things Laura was saying about you last night didn't sound right based on what I know." "What was she saying?" I texted back. "That you've tried to sabotage their relationship from the beginning. That you're jealous of her, and financially controlling Michael through the wedding. I defended you, but thought you should know." I felt physically ill reading those words. Laura was systematically turning people against me, including my own brother. When I tried calling Michael to discuss it, my calls went straight to voicemail. It took 3 days before he responded, and only by text. "Now isn't a good time. Laura's stressed about wedding stuff. Talk later." Later never seemed to come. The only time Michael was responsive was when he needed another payment processed or contract signed. I began to feel like nothing more than a walking checkbook. The bridal shower was another painful experience. Beverly had organized it at her country club, and while I was invited, I was clearly an afterthought. When the maid of honor gave a speech about the important women in Laura's life, I was noticeably absent from the list, despite funding the entire event, including the expensive party favors from Tiffany. After most guests had left, Beverly cornered me by the dessert table. "Laura mentioned you've been difficult about some of the wedding expenses." "I've been trying to keep things within the agreed budget," I replied carefully. Beverly gave me a cold smile. "Perhaps in your world $45,000 seems like a lot for a wedding, but Michael is marrying into a family with certain standards. If meeting those standards is too challenging for you, perhaps you should reconsider your involvement." "My involvement? I'm Michael's sister." "Yes, well, family takes many forms, doesn't it, Laura? Is his family now. I drove home that night with Beverly's words echoing in my head. Laura is his family now, as if there wasn't room for both of us in Michael's life. As if the 25 years of history between my brother and me could be erased by a 2-year relationship. My mother, Deborah, was no help either. When I called her to express my concerns, she shut me down immediately. Samantha, you need to stop making trouble. This is Michael's big day. I'm not making trouble, Mom. I'm being manipulated and excluded while bankrolling the entire event. Sometimes we make sacrifices for family harmony, she said dismissively. If writing checks is all you have to do, count yourself lucky. Just keep the peace, and everything will settle down after the wedding. But I was beginning to doubt that. This didn't feel like pre-wedding stress. It felt like a coordinated campaign to push me to the margins of my brother's life, while keeping my financial support firmly in place. By this point, I was isolated from nearly everyone involved in the wedding planning. My calls went unanswered. My suggestions were ignored. My presence was tolerated only when signatures or payments were required. I was spending tens of thousands of dollars on an event I was increasingly certain I would attend only as a peripheral figure, watching from the sidelines as my brother married someone who seemed determined to sever our relationship. The worst part was seeing Michael transform from the sweet, appreciative brother I'd always known into someone who viewed my generosity as an obligation rather than a gift. The gulf between us widened with each passing day, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to bridge it. 2 weeks before the wedding, everything came to a head. I had just transferred the final $20,000 to cover the outstanding balances with various vendors. The flowers were paid for. The photographer's deposit was secured. The venue had received its final installment. All told, I had spent $68,000, far exceeding the original budget, but fulfilling every extravagant request. I was sitting at my desk at work trying to focus on a client presentation when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize containing several photos. Curious, I opened it. The photos showed Michael, Laura, and both sets of parents at what appeared to be the wedding rehearsal dinner. They were smiling, raising glasses in a toast, looking like the perfect happy family. A family that didn't include me. Before I could process what I was seeing, another message came through, this time from Michael's number. You're not invited. Laura doesn't want you there. I stared at my phone in disbelief. This couldn't be real. After everything I had done, after all the money I had spent, after a lifetime of being there for my brother, I was being excluded from his wedding via text message. With shaking hands, I called Michael. To my surprise, he actually answered. What is going on? I demanded, my voice cracking. Is this some kind of joke? It's not a joke, Sam, Michael replied, his voice flat. Laura and I have discussed it, and we think it's best if you don't attend the wedding. Best for who, Michael? I'm your sister. I've paid for the entire wedding. How could you possibly think this is okay? That's exactly the problem, he said. You've held the money over our heads this entire time. Every suggestion, every change you've made, it's clear you're the one in control, because you're the one paying. That's not true, and you know it. I've agreed to nearly every change, every increase. I've bent over backward to give you both everything you wanted. While complaining about it the whole time, he countered. Laura's been in tears constantly because of your negativity. You've made what should be the happiest time of our lives completely stressful. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Michael, Laura has been manipulating you. She's been telling people I'm trying to sabotage your relationship. She's been excluding me from everything while having no problem spending my money. See, this is exactly why you're not invited. You can't help yourself. You've never liked Laura, and you've tried to come between us from day one. The unfairness of his accusation left me speechless. I had welcomed Laura into our family. I had funded their dream wedding without hesitation. I had swallowed my concerns and continued to write checks, even as I was increasingly sidelined. I need to speak with Mom, I finally said. Mom agrees with our decision, Michael replied coldly. She thinks you've been making everything about yourself instead of supporting us." After hanging up, I immediately called my mother, certain there had been some misunderstanding. The conversation that followed shattered whatever remaining hope I had. "Samantha, I think you need to respect Michael and Laura's wishes," Deborah said. "Mom, they're banning me from the wedding that I paid for. How can you possibly support that? You've created a lot of tension with your controlling behavior. Perhaps it's better for everyone if you keep your distance until after the wedding." "My controlling behavior? I've literally just been writing checks. What about Laura manipulating Michael and turning him against me?" "Laura makes Michael happy," my mother replied simply. "That should be enough for you." "And what about the money?" I asked, finally giving voice to the question that had been nagging at me. "Are they still expecting me to pay the final installments even though I'm not welcome at the wedding?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, my mother spoke. "The vendors have been paid, haven't they? It would be petty to cause problems at this point." That's when I understood completely. They still expected my financial support even while rejecting me personally. I was good enough to fund the wedding, but not good enough to attend it. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. This wasn't just about money, although $68,000 was certainly not a small sum. This was about my place in my brother's life, about the bond I thought we shared, about the years of sacrifice and love that apparently meant nothing in the face of Laura's influence. Later that day, I received a call from the wedding planner, Jennifer, who sounded uncomfortable. "Samantha, I'm just checking in about the final payment for the band. They haven't received it yet." I was told all the vendors had been paid. I replied, confused. "Most have, but there are still a few outstanding balances. Also, Laura mentioned you might not be attending. She asked me to reallocate your seat at the family table." "Did she happen to mention why I'm not attending?" Jennifer hesitated. "She said something about you having mental health issues and creating drama. She suggested it was better for everyone if you kept your distance." Mental health issues. Creating drama. The lies were getting more outrageous. Not only was I being excluded from the wedding, but Laura was also actively damaging my reputation with people we both knew. That evening, I discovered through social media that I had also been uninvited from Michael's bachelor party, an event I had helped plan and naturally paid for. Photos showed Michael and his friends at a brewery tour, all smiles and laughter without me. In one particularly painful image, I spotted Laura's brother Timothy wearing the custom t-shirt I had ordered for the groomsmen. The caption read, "Final fittings for the big day, counting down to the Reynolds-Wilson wedding." The Reynolds-Wilson wedding. Not the Wilson-Reynolds wedding. Even in name, my family was being erased. As I scrolled through more photos, I found one of Laura at her bachelorette party holding up a sign that read, "No drama allowed." Several comments below made thinly veiled references to me being the drama in question. Sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by wedding planning, documents, vendor contracts, and payment receipts, something inside me finally snapped. I had spent my entire adult life supporting my brother emotionally and financially. I had given up opportunities, made sacrifices, and now offered an extraordinarily generous gift for his wedding. In return, I had been manipulated, lied about, and ultimately discarded. For the first time since this ordeal began, I saw with perfect clarity what I needed to do. No more compromising, no more turning the other cheek, no more blank checks. It was time to stand up for myself, even if that meant standing alone. The moment of clarity I experienced that night changed everything. After years of putting my brother's needs above my own, I finally recognized that I deserved better treatment. No amount of family loyalty justified being used and discarded like this. My first call the next morning was to my friend Alexandra, who happened to be a contract lawyer. I explained the situation, laying out the timeline of payments, the formal exclusion from the wedding, and the lies being spread about me. "Let me get this straight," Alexandra said after listening patiently. You've paid nearly $70,000 for a wedding you're now being told not to attend, and they're expecting you to continue covering final payments. That's the gist of it, yes. Samantha, you need to protect yourself. These payments were gifts, not contractual obligations. You're under no legal requirement to continue funding an event you've been explicitly uninvited from. What about the vendors? Some have final payments due. Those contracts are between you and the vendors, not between the vendors and Michael or Laura. You have every right to cancel those services. With Alexandra's guidance, I spent the next day systematically contacting all 15 vendors involved in the wedding. I explained that due to unforeseen circumstances, I would be canceling the remaining services and requesting refunds where possible. The florist was understanding. We haven't ordered the flowers yet, so I can refund your deposit, minus a small processing fee. The band was less accommodating, but agreed to a partial refund. We've turned down other bookings for this date, but we can return half of your deposit if we find another client. The venue manager was surprisingly sympathetic. This happens more often than you'd think. Family disagreements around weddings are common. We can refund 30% of your final payment, since we haven't ordered the food yet. One by one, I worked through the list, reclaiming what money I could, and canceling services that hadn't yet been rendered. I carefully documented each conversation and kept records of all refunds processed. The wedding dress was another matter entirely. I had paid for it in full, a $10,000 designer gown that Laura had insisted was the one. I contacted the boutique and explained the situation. The dress has been altered to Miss Reynolds' measurements, the boutique owner explained. We can't resell it. I understand that. I'd like to come pick it up. It's been paid for with my credit card, and the receipt is in my name. There was a long pause. Miss Wilson, this is highly unusual. So is paying for a wedding you're banned from attending, I replied evenly. I'll be there tomorrow at 10. The next day I drove to Detroit and collected the dress carefully packed in its garment bag. I wasn't sure what I would do with it yet, but it felt important to reclaim this tangible symbol of how I'd been taken advantage of. Back at my apartment, I turned my attention to the cloud folder, containing all the wedding planning documents. I spent hours deleting 55 files filled with vendor, contacts, contracts, inspiration photos, guest lists, and seating arrangements. Everything we had built together over months of planning gone with a few clicks. Then came the hardest part, sending a final message to Michael, Laura, and my mother. I took a deep breath and typed, "Then pay for it yourselves, leeches. I've canceled all outstanding vendor contracts and received what refunds were possible. You've made it clear I'm not welcome as family, so I'm no longer providing financial support as family. Good luck with your wedding." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Almost immediately my phone began ringing. I ignored calls from Michael, Laura, and my mother, sending them all to voicemail. Then I blocked their numbers, along with those of Laura's family members. I also blocked them on all social media platforms, cutting off their access to me completely. The barrage of messages came through other channels. Emails, messages through mutual friends, even a handwritten note delivered to my office. The tone ranged from outrage to pleading. "You can't do this to us," Laura wrote. "The wedding is in 2 weeks. Please reconsider," my mother begged. "This is destroying the family." "I can't believe you would stoop this low," Michael accused. "This proves everything Laura said about you was right." I deleted them all without responding. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I felt a sense of power returning. I was no longer allowing myself to be manipulated and exploited. To my surprise, not everyone in the family sided against me. My Aunt Karen, my mother's sister, called me directly. "Samantha, I heard what happened. I want you to know I think you did the right thing." "You do?" I asked, shocked to find any support among family members. "Absolutely. I've watched Laura manipulate this situation from the beginning. She's been driving a wedge between you and Michael while happily spending your money. It's disgraceful." Karen went on to tell me that Laura had been bad-mouthing me to the extended family for months, painting me as mentally unstable and unhealthily attached to Michael. She had even suggested I had financial problems, and was using the wedding as a way to show off and buy my brother's affection. None of us who really know you believed it, Karen assured me. But Michael seems completely under her spell. Having even one family member understand and support me meant more than I could express. I found myself crying for the first time since making my decision, but these were tears of relief rather than sorrow. The next day, Michael called from a different number bypassing my blocks. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should hear him out. "Sam, please," he began, his voice desperate. "We need the money. The venue is threatening to cancel everything. Laura's parents won't help. They said it's not their responsibility." Interesting that they won't step up. Now that my checkbook is closed, I observed coldly. "This is our wedding, Sam. How can you do this to us?" "To you? What about what you've done to me? You excluded me from your wedding, Michael. The wedding I paid for. You let Laura spread lies about me. You chose her over me at every turn, even after everything I've done for you throughout your life." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "No, what's not fair is expecting me to finance an event I'm explicitly told not to attend. What's not fair is being treated like an ATM rather than your sister." "We can work something out," he said. "Maybe you can come to the ceremony, just not the reception. Laura thinks that would be a good compromise." The audacity of his offer left me speechless. A compromise would have been working things out weeks ago, not 2 days after I'd canceled everything. "The time for compromises has passed," I finally replied. "You made your choice, Michael. Now you and Laura can figure out how to pay for your own wedding." After hanging up, I received a series of increasingly frantic voicemails from my mother. "Samantha, you're being childish and selfish. This is your brother's wedding. Your behavior is tearing this family apart. Is that what you want? If you don't fix this immediately, don't expect to be welcome at family gatherings in the future." The last message was the most telling. "William and Beverly are furious. They're saying you've made them look bad in front of their friends. How could you embarrass us like this?" So, that was it. The wealthy Reynolds family, who could easily have covered the wedding costs themselves, were upset about looking bad. My mother was more concerned with appeasing them than standing up for her daughter who had been mistreated. The final escalation came in the form of a cease and desist letter from Laura's uncle Gregory, an attorney at her father's firm. The letter claimed I had maliciously interfered with contractual obligations and demanded I reinstate all payments immediately or face legal action. I forwarded the letter to Alexandra, who laughed out loud when she called me back. "This is completely unenforceable," she assured me. "Your payments were gifts, not contractual obligations to Michael or Laura. The contracts with vendors were between you and those businesses, which you've now settled legally. They have no case." Alexandra drafted a response letter, detailing all payments made as gifts, all vendor contracts legally terminated, and all refunds properly processed. She ended with a warning that any further harassment could result in a restraining order. "Send this," she advised, "and I guarantee you won't hear from Uncle Gregory again." She was right. The legal threats stopped immediately, but the emotional fallout was just beginning. The wedding, unsurprisingly, did not take place as planned. Through mutual friends, I learned it had been postponed indefinitely, while Michael and Laura scrambled to figure out their next steps. The elaborate celebration at the Grand Peninsula Hotel was canceled, losing them the non-refundable deposits that had already been paid. A week after what should have been the wedding day, Michael showed up at my apartment unannounced. When the doorman called up, I was tempted to turn him away, but decided it was time to face my brother directly. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. Michael looked thin and exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, allowing him into the apartment, but maintaining emotional distance. We sat across from each other in my living room, the silence stretching uncomfortably between us. "Laura and I broke up," he finally said, his voice hollow. While I hadn't expected this revelation, I couldn't say I was entirely surprised. What happened? After you canceled everything, her true colors came out. She expected me to somehow come up with the money. When I couldn't, she started blaming me for not handling you better. She said, if I had kept you in line, none of this would have happened. I bit back the urge to say I told you so, and simply listened. Her parents refused to help financially. They said they'd contribute to our first house someday, but the wedding was, traditionally, the bride's family's responsibility. When I pointed out that they weren't fulfilling that responsibility either, William told me I wasn't Reynolds material after all. Michael ran his hands through his hair, looking utterly defeated. Then, I found out something worse. Laura had been going through my financial documents. She found out about the trust fund Grandma left me that matures when I turn 35. She had been planning our marriage around that date all along. This was news to me. Our grandmother had left small trusts for both of us, but I had never mentioned mine to anyone, assuming Michael had done the same. How did you find out? I asked. She got drunk after another fight about money, and threw it in my face. Said she'd wasted 2 years on a guy who couldn't even access his inheritance when she needed it, like that was the only reason she was with me. As much as Michael had hurt me, seeing him so broken brought back echoes of protective instincts I'd developed over our shared childhood. Still, I maintained my boundaries. I'm sorry you're going through this, Michael. Truly. But it doesn't erase what happened between us. I know, he whispered. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know you were right about her. And I'm sorry. So incredibly sorry. Our conversation lasted hours, digging into how Laura had systematically isolated Michael from me and others who cared about him. How she'd twisted his perception of events and convinced him I was trying to control him rather than support him. How she'd played on his insecurities about money and status to make him dependent on her validation. She kept saying things like, "Your sister thinks you're not good enough to make your own decisions," or, "Samantha's just trying to buy your love because she has no real relationships in her life." Michael explained. After hearing it enough times, I started to believe it. While Michael's apology felt sincere, it couldn't immediately heal the deep wounds of betrayal. I told him I needed time and space to process everything, and he respected that, leaving with a simple, "I'm here when you're ready to talk again." The fallout extended far beyond just Michael and Laura. Our extended family fractured along lines of loyalty. Some, like Aunt Karen, stood firmly with me, recognizing the manipulation and unfairness I'd endured. Others, particularly those who had been closer to Laura, continued to blame me for ruining the wedding and abandoning my brother. My mother's reaction was perhaps the most complicated. After the initial anger and blame, she fell into a pattern of guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation. "How will I ever face the Reynolds family at church now?" she lamented during one phone call. "Everyone knows what happened." "What exactly do they know, Mom?" I challenged. "Do they know I was uninvited from a wedding I paid for? Do they know about the lies Laura spread about me?" "It's all so messy," she deflected. "Families should stick together no matter what." "That goes both ways," I reminded her. "You didn't stick by me when I was being mistreated." Our relationship remained strained, with conversations brief and superficial. The deep trust and openness we once shared seemed irreparably damaged. I missed my grandmother's birthday celebration, that September, the first family gathering I hadn't attended in years. Aunt Karen called afterward to check on me. "Your mother kept making excuses for why you weren't there," she reported. "First it was work, then a mysterious illness. She couldn't just admit there's a rift." "Is Michael still blaming me to everyone?" I asked. "No, actually. He was quiet most of the night, but when Uncle Paul made a comment about you being selfish, Michael shut him down immediately. Said none of this would have happened if he had listened to you from the beginning." That small act of defense meant something, though it couldn't erase the months of pain. In October, I received an unexpected call from my estranged father, Patrick. We hadn't spoken regularly in years, maintaining only occasional contact on holidays and birthdays. "I heard about what happened with your brother's wedding," he said after an awkward greeting. "Your mother called me, if you can believe it, trying to get me to talk you into making amends." "And what did you tell her?" I asked cautiously. "I told her you've always been the responsible one, the one holding that family together. If you took such a drastic step, you must have had damn good reasons." Coming from my father, who had often been critical of me growing up, this vote of confidence was unexpected and touching. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." "Listen, Samantha. I wasn't a good father to you or Michael. I know that. But if there's one thing I've learned in my life, it's that you have to set boundaries with people who take advantage of your generosity. Even family. Especially family." That conversation opened the door to a tentative rebuilding of my relationship with my father, something I hadn't anticipated as a result of this whole ordeal. The professional fallout was another unexpected aspect of the situation. Word had spread in my office about my family emergency, and my boss Thomas had been surprisingly supportive, giving me time off when I needed it most. "Family dynamics can be more draining than any work project," he said during a check-in meeting. "Take the time you need. Your clients will understand." One particularly difficult aspect of the aftermath was dealing with the anonymous threatening messages that began appearing on my social media accounts. "Family traitor, selfish bitch," and worse filled my inboxes. With Alexandra's help, we traced several of these accounts back to Timothy, Laura's brother, who apparently couldn't accept that his sister's manipulation had been exposed. A cease and desist letter quickly put an end to that harassment. Timothy's last message before disappearing from my digital life was telling Laura always gets what she wants. Always. "You'll regret crossing her." But Laura hadn't gotten what she wanted this time. According to mutual friends, she had moved back in with her parents and was already dating someone new, a divorced banker with significantly more accessible wealth than my brother. As for Michael, we began the slow process of rebuilding trust. We started with occasional texts, then coffee every few weeks. The easy closeness we once shared was gone, replaced by something more cautious and measured. Whether our relationship would ever fully recover remained uncertain, but at least we were trying. Through it all, I discovered a strength in myself I hadn't fully recognized before. The sister, who would have done anything for her brother, including bankrupting herself, had been replaced by a woman who understood her own worth and refused to be exploited even by those she loved most. 6 months after what should have been Michael's wedding day, I found myself sitting on a beach in Hawaii watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. This trip was supposed to have been my post-wedding vacation, a chance to recover from the festivities and process my changing relationship with my brother. Instead, it had become a solo journey of healing and self-discovery. The transformation I had undergone in those months was profound. The raw wound of betrayal had gradually scarred over, still visible, but no longer actively painful. I had learned to set boundaries not just with Michael and my mother but with everyone in my life. No had become a complete sentence for me. No to excessive demands. No to emotional manipulation. No to being taken for granted. Through a mutual friend, I heard that Michael and Laura had eventually had a small courthouse wedding 3 months after the original date. Only her parents and my mother had attended. The extravagant celebration they had envisioned, and that I had nearly funded, never materialized. Beverly Reynolds, I learned with a touch of schadenfreude, had been forced to file for bankruptcy after co-signing loans for what was supposed to be the rescheduled wedding. Apparently Laura had continued spending, as if nothing had changed, assuming someone would bail them out eventually. When no one did, the financial consequences fell heavily on Beverly, who had never imagined she might actually be held responsible for the debts she guaranteed. While part of me felt a certain satisfaction in this news, I took no real joy in anyone's suffering. The whole situation had been unnecessary, created by greed, manipulation, and a failure to appreciate genuine generosity. My own healing came not from their misfortune but from the chosen family I had built around me. Friends like Alexandra, who had stood by me during the worst moments. colleagues who had shown understanding when I needed time to process my emotions, new connections I had made through a support group for people healing from family estrangement. One unexpected reconnection came with my cousin Natalie, who had experienced similar treatment from Laura during the wedding planning. She told me my children were too rowdy to be in the wedding, Natalie confided over lunch. Then I found out she was telling everyone I had asked for my kids to be included when she'd actually uninvited them. Classic Laura, creating problems where none existed. Natalie and I had never been particularly close growing up, but our shared experience with Laura's manipulation created a bond between us. We began a tradition of monthly brunches, supporting each other through the complicated emotions that came with setting boundaries with family. My relationship with my mother remained complicated. Deborah continued to pressure me to let bygones be bygones and be the bigger person. She seemed unable to acknowledge her role in enabling the situation, or to understand why I remained cautious around Michael. "He's your brother," she would say, as if that single fact should erase all the pain he had caused. "Being family doesn't give someone the right to mistreat you," I would respond. "Love should come with respect." Through weekly sessions with my therapist, Dr. Martinez, I began to recognize patterns in my family dynamics that had set the stage for what happened with the wedding. I had always been the responsible one, the giver, the fixer. People had come to expect limitless generosity from me, without feeling obligated to show appreciation or reciprocity. "You were conditioned to derive your worth from what you could provide for others," Dr. Martinez observed during one particularly insightful session. "Breaking that pattern feels threatening to those who benefited from it." This framework helped me understand why my actions had seemed so shocking to my family. By reclaiming my power and refusing to be exploited, I had disrupted a system that had functioned for years at my expense. The financial aspect of the situation resolved itself over time. I received about $22,000 in refunds from various vendors, and less than a third of what I had spent, but I considered it a reasonable cost for the valuable lessons I had learned. Some expenses simply couldn't be recouped, like the designer wedding dress that still hung in the back of my closet, a tangible reminder of boundaries crossed and lessons learned. 4 months after our courthouse wedding, I received a letter from Michael. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter that showed an effort I hadn't seen from him in years. "Samantha," it began, "I've started this letter a dozen times, never finding the right words. How do you apologize for something that goes beyond a simple, 'I'm sorry'? How do you make amends for betraying the one person who has always been there for you?" The letter acknowledged the pain he had caused, but stopped short of a true apology. He explained his actions rather than taking full responsibility for them. Still, it was more self-awareness than he had shown previously, and I took it as a positive sign. I didn't rush to respond. Instead, I sat with his words for several days, discussing them with Dr. Martinez and considering what kind of relationship I wanted with my brother moving forward. Eventually, I wrote back expressing my appreciation for his letter, while making it clear that rebuilding our relationship would be a long process, requiring consistent effort on both sides. I set clear expectations about respect, communication, and boundaries. Whether he could meet them remained to be seen. As the 1-year anniversary of the canceled wedding approached, I found myself in a completely different place emotionally than I had been 12 months earlier. My promotion to senior financial director at work reflected the confidence and assertiveness I had developed. The boundaries I maintained in my personal relationships resulted in fewer but deeper connections with people who truly valued me. My final test came unexpectedly during a business dinner at an upscale restaurant in Chicago. As I was being seated with clients, I spotted Laura at a nearby table dining with her parents. Our eyes met briefly, and I felt a momentary surge of anxiety. In the past, I might have left to avoid confrontation or felt obligated to make polite conversation. Instead, I simply nodded in acknowledgement and turned my attention back to my clients. Later, as I was leaving, Laura approached me near the coat check. "Samantha," she said, her voice carrying the false warmth I had come to recognize. "What a surprise. You look well. Thank you, Laura. I am well. I heard you got promoted. Congratulations. Thank you. Michael misses you. You know, she said, dropping her voice. The situation with the wedding was unfortunate for everyone. The old me would have taken the bait, either apologizing unnecessarily or engaging in a futile argument. Instead, I smiled politely. I'm glad you and Michael are happy. If you'll excuse me, my car is waiting. As I walked away, I felt a profound sense of freedom. Laura no longer had the power to manipulate my emotions or disrupt my peace. I had reclaimed my narrative and my worth. The most surprising development came just before Christmas, when my mother called with an uncharacteristic hesitation in her voice. Samantha, I owe you an apology, she said, the words clearly difficult for her. I've been thinking a lot about what happened with Michael's wedding, about how I failed to stand up for you. I appreciate that, Mom, I replied, genuinely touched by her rare admission. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I didn't see how unfairly you were being treated. I should have been on your side. While one conversation couldn't heal years of dysfunctional patterns, it was a start. We agreed to meet for lunch after the holidays, a small step toward rebuilding trust. As I reflect on the journey of the past year, I realize that sometimes the most painful experiences bring the most valuable growth. I lost the illusion of an idealized family, but gained authentic relationships based on mutual respect. I lost the role of perpetual giver, but gained a balanced approach to generosity that doesn't deplete me. I lost my fear of conflict, but gained the confidence to stand in my truth even when it's uncomfortable. The wedding that never was became one of my life's most significant turning points. Not because of the money lost or the relationships changed, but because it forced me to recognize my own worth beyond what I could provide for others. Sometimes the price of admission to a wedding isn't money but your dignity, and that's a price I'll never pay again. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your generosity for granted? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more about navigating complex family dynamics and learning to value yourself. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to say no, even to family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true family respects your boundaries as much as they appreciate your generosity.